Is this thing on? What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Saturday. If you are watching this live, then your Saturday did not go quite as well as you had hoped. Slash is already in saying, sup, Slash? First in, I like it. So when last we were talking, I was going through some of the things that, kind of the do's with the Hellcat. Do's, don'ts, things like that. And, it kind of dawned on me. My G, what's up, man? So it kind of dawned on me, I kind of went through the whole thing, but, I'll tell you something. I didn't really feel like I did the topic justice. So I may circle back around and touch on a few topics on there. But let me hang out with you guys real quick. Slash is first in saying, sorry for asking a question without knowing the topic, but is there a way that an HP90 Trans would fit up with the 392? Yes, absolutely. There is a conversion kit. I think HHP, MMX sell the conversion kit. Of course, you got to buy the transmission. I think there's a difference with there is a difference with the drive shaft as well. But you can. In fact, H-Quinn, aka Dad Mod, he's the guy with that yellow 426 F trim or F1A, whatever it is, Pro Charger. He's actually got one of my intakes and one of my cams in that car. He is running that kit, the swap kit for the HP90. So it is definitely able to be done, and I highly suggest it if you're going to be throwing a bunch of power at that thing. Doc Diff checking in. What's up, man? Clutch 392. Jerry's checking in. Yo, B, what's up, man? Got the arm flex. I like it. Mark's checking in saying, Professor, man, what is happening, brother? Saying, I've been trying to catch your live streams for a couple of weeks, but I've been busy. Good to be back. Trying to buy a 6.1 in April and throw a Whipple on it. That'll be a fun car, man. 6.1 cars, man, I got such a soft spot in my heart for those things. The bummer, here's the thing. So let's talk about that for a minute. That's a good thing to chat about. Ryan's checking in and saying, what up, B? What's up, Ryan? So here's the thing. When it comes to the 6.1s, it's weird because from 2008, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, the 392 didn't exist. Well, it did in 11, but from 8, 9, and 10, you had, the sweetness of the 6.1. The reason why I say it like that is because there was really nothing else out there that was going to mess with that car. Certainly not in 8, 9, and 10. You had the Coyote basically get released second half of 2010, but the 392 just wasn't there yet. And so we had the 6.1, and the 6.1 got us that 426 horsepower, that mythical number that just rings every Mopar guy's bell about that original 426 Hemi. Here it is, the 6.1 is getting the job done at 425 horsepower. Pretty cool deal. A lot of folks love that engine. And what's funny is that a lot of people don't realize that for a lot of folks, the 6.1 is pretty much the end of the conversation when it comes to Mopar stuff. I go, why would that be? I mean, the 6.1 by rights, wouldn't that be an inferior platform? Well, not necessarily. Thing is, with the 6.1, it's a more traditional layout. It's got a normal intake manifold. What guys are used to back here. Oh, yeah. I just got through swapping out transmission fluid on Foxy, too, so I didn't realize I had a smudge back there. But a lot of guys just didn't like the idea of variable cam timing. They didn't like the idea of multiple displacement. The whole DOD thing, displacement on demand, by the way, that didn't really taste so hot to a lot of traditional hot rodders. The complications of the variable runner intake manifold, they weren't having it, and they weren't bummed out with the way that their cars were running, especially in 2008, 9, 10, even getting into 2011, 2012. Yeah, there was a benefit to the 392, I guess, on a dyno, but man, the 6.1 guys were having a blast with theirs already. So the benefit to the 6.1 is that it's just a much less complicated car. And if I'm being honest, it's a lot of fun to drive. It gives a traditional driving experience, a good punch in that mid-range. Something that the 392 never was really able to master. The thing is if you start off low and you ramp the power up in the mid-range, you get this sense of a peaky torque band. It's kind of it's a different driving experience, whereas the 392 starts out higher and it just tabletops. So you never really get this kind of a rush feeling. And so even though the car may be faster, maybe accelerating faster, transmission for transmission in this case, you never really got the sense that it was. And what's funny is that my first taste of the 6.1 came with a SRT8 300. I never thought that car was slow. I always thought that it was a good running car. Didn't think it was fast, but I always just liked driving those things. And for the guys that are doing swaps, that 6.1 NAG1 combination is kind of the sweet spot. So anyway, a little bit jealous of the guys with the 6.1 cars. Mainly, just I like the simplicity. That's the car that got me back really looking at Mopar anyway. This is back, 2008. That's what kind of swung me back in that direction. So definitely a fun car. Definitely one that I would recommend. Eric Taylor saying, good evening, Professor B. What's up, man? Unique Groom saying, HP90, what's your take on rebuilding them? Well, I mean, listen, if you stress an HP90 to the point where it's got to be rebuilt, you've done something. I mean, believe me when I tell you, I've seen HP90s take, 800 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. That translates to about 900, 860 to 900, depends on how dyno jet power is what we're talking about there. At the drag strip, over and over. I mean, just like years of abuse, and they don't have any problem keeping pace. So I've seen them at that power level. I've seen them at every power level, frankly, without any rebuild or upgrade, and they do just fine. So what's my take on rebuilding them? Man, I would say just do a stock rebuild if you have to, and then figure out what you did to piss it off to begin with, because those things are damn near nuke proof, at least from what I've seen. Doctor is saying, what is the topic tonight? We're just rolling into it. Haven't really set one up yet. In fact, I'm going to kind of leave this up to you guys. Talk about a little bit of everything this evening. Like I said, I started on the Hellcat stuff last week. I may kind of swing back into that, but for the most part, the topic is pretty much open. Saying, how about the importance of O2 sensors, and see if Jarrett gets on. He has a heater code and PE doesn't work. Something won't go. Huh? What? Let's see. Well, that sucks. Them boys saying, why don't they bring the 6.1 Hemi but in the RT and just put a naturally aspirated 6.2 in the RT? Funny you should ask that. So there was a lot of folks that were asking a very similar question, Dim, and here's the thing. The 5.7 is the corporate V8. Here's my question. First of all, the 5.7, this is where displacement, I'll be honest with you, 5.7, 6.0, you're really starting to get a difference there, but quite honestly, the 5.7 in the car, what would it benefit from the most would be a variable runner intake manifold. With every car intake that I port, I am mesmerized that the thing even makes 370 something horsepower. That car is shackled by several things. That engine is held back by quite a few things. The exhaust system, number one. Number two, the intake manifold. Just look at the difference in power between the trucks and the cars. They'll both put down the same power to the rear wheels, with the truck having a significantly heavier wheel and tire combination. So there's that. But the truck, 395, basically 400 horsepower versus 370, 75. It's about a 25 horsepower difference there. So, yeah, it would be cool if there were something a little bit different going on with the 5.7, at least breathe a little bit of life into the thing, considering how long that thing has been the tug motor for these Challengers and Chargers for so many years, I think I'm with you. I would like to see some level of an upgrade there. Give me a little bit better exhaust system, please. I mean, this is supposed to be going in a performance car. Give it the same manifolds that the Hellcat and the Scat Packs get. I just don't understand why it doesn't. Same exhaust system too. It's not gonna, in fact, it would be easier to keep making those systems than those logs that they get. I mean, I get it might be a little bit cheaper, but damn, how many of us hands in the air would pay an extra $300 for the car just to have the right exhaust system on it, right? So between that, change the OS to mimic the truck. You don't have to do anything there. Put the truck-derived intake manifold on it. And instead of 370 horsepower, allow the thing to make 400 horsepower. Now, I understand. I get it here. Look, that would narrow the delta between the 5.7 and the 6.4. But guys, look, I think the 5.7 has put in the work. I think the 5.7 deserves an upgrade. I think the 5.7 deserves a little bit of a breath of life. Look, if they're not going to do anything with the 392, which they're not, they need to get on the 5.7. And if they're not going to get on the 5.7, which they're not, then they need to do something else with the platform in general. Either get some kind of a bump in displacement, which they'll never do. Do something about that the Hellcat platform. Mainly, please don't allow people with red eyes to take their cars to the drag strip when they're stuck. Sorry, story from last weekend. But anyway, you see my point. I think that the platform itself, just in general, has got it coming to it. It's put in the work. It's put in the overtime. Let's go ahead and get this thing a refresh. And while we're refreshing the platform, breathe a little bit of love into the powertrains. I think that'd go a long way. Oh yeah, and give these guys a little bit more of a rear end option to choose from. Nobody, and I mean nobody, would be talking about a bump in displacement for the 5.7 making 400-ish horsepower if you had a 3.31 gear ratio available to you, 3.23 gear ratio available to you, 3.45 gear ratio available to you. Just stop, pause, and go with whatever number sounds good. The 3.4 anything would be a little bit aggressive, but I think you know where I'm going with this. At least for the 392 cars, that 3.27 to 3.31 would be ideal. And for the 5.7 guys, that 340 would be probably perfect, especially for the guys that are taking their cars to the drag strip. And let's be honest, that's how they market these things. Tire smoke, all the pomp, circumstance, rock and roll, tattoos, boobs, muscles, the whole thing. That's their marketing strategy, but they've got to back it up with the mechanical equivalent. Hang on just a second. Jermaine, thank you very much. Saying, what's up, Mason? Watched some of your old videos and ported my 5.7 manifold. Damn right. Thank you, sir. Got the arm flex. I love it. Good to see you out there doing that, putting in a little bit of work. I think you saw that it's a time-consuming process. Certainly can be. So, excellent, man. I'm glad you got out there. Hopefully I gave you some confidence to let you know that, yes, you can do this. It just takes a little bit of practice, a lot of patience, a soft hand, and don't go overboard with it. But I'm stoked, man. I'm very happy for you, man. It makes me smile. I like that a lot, my man. Thank you very much for the contribution as well. Let's see. Brendan's checking in saying, ran my Hellcat for the first time yesterday. Deal was about $650. I was full weight, and on top of that, I'm 6'3", 265. I ran a 10.8 32 at 127 for my best run. I was hoping for at least a 10.6. Bro, look, that's actually not shabby first run out. So, hey, Brendan, come here. Let me tell you a secret. So you're 1083 at 127. Let me tell you what that translates to in Redeye world. The last Redeye wide body on a tire that was at the track was on, well, it was last Friday. Not this past Friday, but last Friday. And the Redeye in DAs that would be considered somewhat similar 1090s and 1080s at 127 miles an hour. So just to let you know, your car's running good. You're coming in a little bit on the heavy side, but I tell you what, that was fantastic. Given the DA and given what you've got done to the car, I'd say that's pretty awesome. Get back out there and do it again. Brandon said, do you think with negative DA and my seats out, I can hit a 10.6, 60 foot was a 1.575? Yes, you can. You can absolutely do that, but you're going to need some negative DA, cut a little bit of weight, 10.6s will be yours all day long. I ran 10.6s in mine, even with the stock gear. So, yeah, you'll be just fine. Drag pack, seats out of it. Go out, run some mid-10s, eat a Frito pie, eat some more mid-10s, drop discharge cargo, run out some 10.6s again. It'll still do it all night long. But yeah, I ran 1060s with mine with a 262 gear and drag pack with the seats in the car, but I'm a little bit smaller guy than you are. DG saying, hey gang, what's up, man? Again, Jermaine, thank you very much. Let's see. Machine's checking in saying, what's the difference between a super stock and a Demon? And which would you get if you got one for free, a Redeye or a super stock? Well, you got to think of it like this. The difference between a Redeye and a Demon is that the Redeye doesn't have the big long scoop hood. It's got the twin snorkels, which 6 to 1, half a dozen to another there. It does have the Carlisle, or the springs that you would consider like the Carlisle Demon killer springs. That same spring rates as those. So it's got Demon springs, Demon, basically everything. The only big difference here is that it does not have the ability to switch back and forth between race gas. But aside from that, everything else is basically identical. Functionally, it's a Demon on pump gas. And hey, look, not a bad place to start. But I would say it's a good platform to get rolling with, but I'm not going to say it's not my cup of tea, but ain't my cup of tea because it's a wide body. And my thoughts on super stock, see, back in the day, this is where marketing starts to go in there and do things. Back in the day, a super stock, it was an actual car that manufacturers would build, and super stock was the class that it raced in. And basically it went like this. Factory hot rod, all the tips, tricks, cheats apply here. Fiberglass hood, fiberglass fenders, acid dipped bodies. Biggest engine that you got with the most aggressive tune that you got with the most aggressive camshaft that you've got, provided that you've got part numbers and folks could buy these parts out of your catalog, you can race it in super stock. So super lightweight, super lightweight seats, the whole bit. Anyway, the super stock now doesn't fall under that category. It's a stock car with a wide body, so it's heavier. It's got the heavier wheels all the way around. To me, it's not a super stock. A super stock, believe it or not, is this little girl right back here. And the reason why I say that is because it's a narrow body, zero option Hellcat with the factory 309 gear from a Scat Pack or whatever. And that's kind of, and the rear seat delete. That is more of a super stock sitting right behind me than the super stock is. Now, if I had lightweight fenders and bumper supports and all that, it would really fall into that, the Spirit more so. But the idea is the spirit of super stock. And like I say, that's more of a super stock than the super stock. And then if I were to get one for free, what would I get? A Redeye or a super stock? Fun question, because there's only 200 super stocks made this year. There's a boatload of Redeyes. Man, I'm going to buck my normal tradition, and I'm going to say super stock just because it's kind of a neat car in that respect. But the smart money for me would be a narrow body. If I'm limited to these cars, it would be a narrow body Redeye. Tad Mason checking in saying, my first car was a 95 Taurus SHO 3.2 auto, fun car. Oh, nothing but Ford until I bought my new Daytona 392, and it reminds me of those old days driving my SHO, but now rear-wheel drive in a big V8. They just never stopped pulling, just like the old SHOs did. That was a fun car, by the way. And yeah, these 392s just keep making power. That's the fun thing about them. Dim's checking in saying, I was thinking of getting a 2015 RT and swapping a 6.1 Hemi into it. I'm sure the motor will pair with the 6-speed manual, but do you think the 6.1 Hemi will mate with the 8-speed auto? Good question. Never heard of anybody retrofitting it, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, because the block bolt pattern I don't think is any different. I'd do the research on me, check that, fact check that, but I think it will bolt on. Let's see. Kevin Collins say, what up, Mason? What up, Kevin? Did you say, do stock exports have square port or D port? Need you get a little bit more specific with that. Do stock EX ports have square port or D port? A little bit more specific on the engine, and I might be able to answer that for you. Or I'm just not catching on to what you're asking. Dim saying, that's what I'm saying, like Dodge needs to pour the same energy into the 5.7. Exactly. See, like Ford and Chevy pours the 5 on the SS. So, man, this is where it becomes kind of difficult to keep flying that, flying this Mopar banner really high. And of course, I love my Fords. I love Chevys. Obviously, Sierra, my GMC. I love that thing to death, Jeeps and all that. But, man, I mean, at some point, there's got to be something given back to the Mopar community for all of this support, and I get it. They're basically collecting dollar bills right now. A profit margin on these cars is high. These guys are making a ton of money. They're going to keep collecting that money until they have a reason not to, basically a reason to change. They're not going to change anything until they're given or forced into changing. If it's me, man, look, like you say, I want to see... And that's a good way to put it. I want to see the same amount of energy. How about this? I want to see the same amount of energy come from Dodge that we fans and those of us that vote Dodge with our hard-earned money every month, because that is what in essence you're doing. You're voting for Dodge every time you make that car payment. I want to see them put the same kind of energy into this that we're putting into it. Again, the marketing thing, it's okay, fine, I get that. But for those of us that have already become a member of the family, I want to see a little bit of payback coming here pretty soon. And I don't need another Hellcat variety of whatever. That doesn't really help us too much. I need to see something more for the guys and gals that are running around in the RTs. I mean, the 392, whatever, we'll get to the 392, but for the 5.7, it's got to be stepped up a little bit. And for no other reason then, it's got to keep pace with the 6.2 and the 5.0 that's going in the trucks, right? So let's take a look at it from at least that perspective to give us some level of perspective of where our competition is heading. And look, if no secret has been made, these guys are going to keep throwing power at these combinations. We got to do the same. And until Dodge really starts stepping up to the plate and offering up something cool, it makes it difficult for me to trade up or trade over or to buy anything new. I'll give you a perfect example of this. When the new body style of the truck came out, I think didn't the weight go up or something? I think the weight went up a couple hundred pounds. I can't remember. Anyway, the point that I'm making is the engine didn't get upgraded. It's still the same engine. It's still the same transmission. Is there a reason to switch over? Is it just is styling good enough? Is the engine power output just good enough to offset the fact that the design hasn't changed for about 10 years? And look, in this day and age, things move that quickly. I mean, it's kind of like we're living in the 50s again with the different engines that are being offered, different powertrain options that are being offered, and all of that. The e-torque, it's kind of gimmicky. I want to see something real. I need a little bit more meat in my burger, if you know what I mean. Team Mopar saying, what up, B? What up, team? Saying, haven't made it to a chat in a while. My 5.7 base 397 stroker is up and running. Very nice. In my 14 GC, and even snagged up some Dodge Demon injectors from Demon 1717 Twin Precision Turbos. 6176 are next. I like it. HU37, I think part of the reason people overlook the 6.1 is the later model 5.7s offer comparable performance. The 8-speed and VVT bridge the gap between the two engines. And yeah, man, I tell you what, yes, they have. That has. But there's a lot of things that bridge the gap, okay? Again, take a look at Foxy. You see this intake manifold right there? It's a GT40 intake manifold. Looks kind of neat. It's god-awful intake. I mean, it's fantastic if you want to make a lot of torque, if you want tip-in throttle response, if you want that type of a driving experience, that's the intake manifold for you. Works great in the truck. But here's the thing. There's a lot of things that have still bridged the gap between this car and more power, and then more power still and more power still, but you don't get this driving experience anymore. And that's the point of the 6.1. There are cars that make more power, and the 5.7 does a great job of basically giving you the same performance as a 6.1 with a smaller displacement. But there's just some things the 5.7 can't do. That's where that 6.1 comes into play. Let's see. Mike G is saying, hey, I noticed after my oil change, the oil level is about 1/4 of an inch above the top mark. You didn't change your oil cooler. How much breathing room does the 5.7 have in terms of overfill? A little bit, but I would definitely level that, that oil level out. A little bit is one thing, but if you're 1/4 of an inch over, especially if your car is not burning any oil, I'd go ahead and pull some of that out. You're going to start running into windage issues. Windage causes foam or the oil to froth up. That can cause issues with oil pressure potentially. So go ahead and pull it out and bring it back down to the normal range. I just did that with this girl over here. I just wasn't paying attention, put in a little bit too much oil, checked it, a little bit high, put her back on the ramps, pulled the plug out, basically filled up a quart of, just a quart, just held the quart right underneath it. Plugged it back up, checked the oil, and then poured the oil in until it was right where I wanted it. Team Mopar saying, time to move away from nitrous. Yeah. HU saying, the latest thing about the 5.7 is that most of them have open diffs. Yeah, that's a pain. GS1 checking in. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Saying, I think I want to buy weld RTSs for my 2019 Scat Pack Charger. Thoughts? Also, any suggestions for wheel hop management? RTSs are pretty good. Just be careful with the welds, though. You got a heavy car, and sometimes you can damage those wheels if you're taking long trips to and from the track. So just know that coming into it. These dark, well, you can't see them, but the Dark Stars, those are the tanks of the drag pack, so to speak, world. So yeah, you can beat those to death, but just treat the welds a little bit more like a piece of jewelry. Suggestions for wheel hop management. Diff brace and lower trailing arms. That's the best way to go. BTR is what I would recommend for the lower trailing arms. The big thing, though, is just making sure that your tires are at the right pressure. Don't try to cheat them down, especially for the street. Won't necessarily help you. You need to be running probably somewhere around 25, 27 pounds of air on the street. On the drag strip with the drag radial, just don't go below 22. It'd be my personal advice. I've found that if I go any lower, even if the track prep is really good, the contact patch will start to kind of bow in a little bit. It'll cup, and it screws with the contact patch. It can make you get some wheel hop. So this is one of those cases where, believe it or not, more pressure will have you a flatter footprint, give you more traction. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. And then Tad's checking in saying, Ford messed up not bringing the V8 Falcon to America. That would have gave Dodge a run for their money. Well, in my opinion, not only did they screw up not bringing that car over, but primarily the Utes. I mean, I don't know. It's a Southern thing, I guess, but you know, I take a look at that and think, damn, we're getting screwed. Not to mention we could have the Barra, which is the nasty 4-liter inline 6 turbo setup that we just don't have an answer for down here. So the Falcon, yeah, for sure, but the Utes, absolutely, and you know, they would be bringing that Barra along with them too. So, but thank y'all very much. Appreciate the contributions, guys. John, I'm saying, thinking about getting a new Ram truck. What are your thoughts on the Hemi tick and the cylinder deactivation system in the 5.7? Thanks for any help. Hemi tick's a real thing. I've heard some folks say that the newer trucks don't suffer from it. So do your research on that. I haven't heard or seen any of them, but yeah, having the issue, but it's not to say that it doesn't exist. What I will say is the cylinder deactivation, the MDS, man, it is like muscle memory now. I reach over and I put my truck into tow haul and kill traction control the first thing I do when I start it up. So there's that. Manual mode will also take it out of that cylinder deactivation mode. I don't really have too much of an issue with it. Mainly though, I don't drive my truck at speeds that would really activate that system. I'm typically on the highway. I'm 75, 80 odd miles an hour. When I am in town, like I say, I've already got the thing in tow haul, which usually will kill that mode. I've got to say that it doesn't really bother me too much though, especially with the newer revised lifters. I don't see there being too much of an issue. MG42 saying, Hemi tick is solved by high quality frequent oil changes. They make too much power for long 20 weight, the long interval change intervals and 20 weight. They really should use a 0-30. Well, I think one of the Hemi ticks he's talking about is the manifold bolts breaking, which actually happened to my work truck. That's the reason why I had that Pacifica, the Chrysler Pacifica review, which was a riot, by the way. If you haven't seen that, check it out. But yep, I mean, that Pacifica, like this. But you know, a lot of folks would agree with you on the 0-30. I don't know. For me, I mean, not that it's in the manual or anything, but I'd run 0-40 in practically any Hemi that I would drive. So seems to work pretty good. Let's see. Vortex say, first SS I know of at the track ran 1013 at 135 today. We've got a bunch of SSs that are quick down here. George Loves Speed, obviously his car is real fast. That's a mid 9-second car in any weather. We've got a couple of other NA cars that are going deep into the 10s right now. 1050, I think, is one of the quicker ones that I've heard of. So you can definitely do it. But, I mean, this is just old school hot rod tricks. Big cam with big, good flowing heads and a car that doesn't really weigh a whole lot, especially when you start stripping weight off of them. Some good tuning, it's really all you need, and they will absolutely get it. Let's see. H337 saying, when I was a kid, the Superstock class was a car that was built and could be street legal except for the slicks. They even had full interiors. Performance was comparable to the Hellcat. Most of them were. So back then, Superstock, when it was first, I think 1962 or 1964. Anyway, 1964 is when the race Hemi, the Super Commando 426, and yes, it was called that. I've got the manual for it right there, as a matter of fact. When that engine came out, it was, you know, it was a mid to high 10-second normally, and some guys were getting mid to low 10-second runs out of those cars and real low DA. And then it just morphed quicker and quicker and quicker from there. But yeah, I mean, that's where they all were. That super stock class eventually became a 9-second class, you know, for cars that, yeah, you could technically drive them on the street back then. Now, obviously, they didn't have the emissions or the safety or anything like that we have today. But, you know, Pioneers only had muskets. You know, now we got AR-15s. And so that's where we're at in terms of power production for a stock car. And that's how far the the technology has come. You know, it's really where we're at. And I mean, could you imagine in the 60s having an engine like we're talking about the 5.7. Here's the funny thing about the 5.7. Let's call it a 400 horsepower 5.7 liter, just because the old SAE measure would be 4% higher than what you're reading today. So if it's 395 400, then you basically add 16 horsepower to that. You know, take 5 away if you want. It's over 400 horsepower by the old standard. How many old small blocks were out there making 400 horsepower? And you don't even have to go that far back. I'll let you stew on that for a minute. Keep in mind that the original Z06, not the one from the 60s, talking about the C5 Z06, it started out life at 385 horsepower out of the same displacement and only went up as high as 405 with the LS6. I should know, I had one. So think of it like that. You basically are driving around in a pickup truck with an LS6 5.7 dragging you around. That's how far we've come, and that's how the technology is built through the years. And it's just something to kind of consider, you know, looking at it like that, you know, transmission technology aside, the power that these things are making is something completely different and certainly worth discussing when we're talking about what these engines, what you can and really can't get away with these modern engines. It's not that they don't take a 200 shot or 150 shot that well. You just have to remember that the mentality of 150 shot of nitrous is coming from somebody who had a 350 or a 300 horsepower or a 280 horsepower small block. And it just doesn't work like that. I mean, you've already got the equivalent driving the thing around without the power adder, and now you're going to throw even more power on it. Metallurgy is only so good. So anyway, getting back to it. Let's see. Kevin's saying, hey Mason, I've seen one of the modern red Hemi's videos where he removed his 373 gear for the 309 on an 8-speed car. Is the 373 just a better fit on the 5-speed trans cars? Well, if you're asking about is the 373 better in the 5-speed, yes, absolutely it is. And the reason for that is because the 5-speed has a more traditional first gear. You got to remember that it's just a simple game of gear multiplication. Transmission ratio times rear end ratio equals total torque multiplication. Give you a perfect example of that. Let's say your first gear is 3.0. It's very common manual transmission first gear and automatic transmission first gear from back in the day. So let's say your first gear transmission is a 3.0 and your rear gear is, well, let's say it's a 3.0 because that's kind of the 309 gear-ish ratio. So your 3.0 on the transmission times your 3.0 rear end gives you a 9-to-1 torque multiplication, which means in essence that if your engine is making 300 pound-feet of torque, that torque would be multiplied times 9, and then that 2,700 pounds of twisting force is what is going to be moving the vehicle forward. Basically, it's 2,700 pounds of thrust, if you want to think of it like that. Obviously for a very short amount of time because, well, you're going to burn through first gear really quickly. But then your next gear might be a 2.5, and so you take 2.5 times 3, which would be a 7.5, right? So 7.5 from 9, then 7.5, you're going to go faster in that gear, but you're going to have a lower torque multiplication. So you'd be, instead of 27, you might be around 2250 in terms of your actual torque multiplication. And that's how all of that works. So when we're talking about the 5-speed, we're talking about a lower first gear than the 8-speed. The 8-speed has a 4.17 first gear. That is a lot of gear multiplication. I mean, think about what kind of rear gear you would have to have in a traditionally geared automatic transmission And 3.0 would be an aggressive first gear, by the way, but a lot of the first gears and the 4-speed automatics were around that number. Just for the sake of argument, close to, or at least within hollering range. But a 4.1, just call it 4.0 times 3.0 for your rear end, that's a 12-to-1 reduction. So what would you have to do in that normal situation? You would be like, it'd be like having a 410 or a 4.0 whatever rear gear, a 4.00 rear gear with that 3.0 first gear. Obviously that's going to limit top speed. That's going to limit cruising RPM to a certain speed, not to exceed, because it'll get buzzy. You get the idea. So at any rate, yes, a long way to express that it is better to run the 370, 373 range gear in that NAG 1. And again, your overdrive is like a 0.67 or 0.80, I think, is what the NAG 1 is. That's perfectly fine. That won't be too buzzy on the freeway. But yeah, it'll definitely wake the thing up, no doubt about it. DG's checking in with Tad. Let's see. Jermaine saying, I think the 5.0 is already the 6.4, giving the 6.4 run for its money for the people that just roll race on the highway. So that's the thing. For the guys that roll race, here's the funny thing. 392 versus 5.0. It's a fun race, because at some point the 5.0 is probably going to come around on you. But it's just when, it's a chase, and you got to run the things out. It's really not a question of who's faster. The 392 always jumps out on the 5.0. At least in my experience it has. It's how long are you going to stay in it to get that 5-liter to come around you. And a lot of times you're doing 120, 125. You're up there in the mile an hour before that 5.0 finally has enough steam built up to come around you. But it's just the difference between how the two engines make power. 392 is designed to make a lot of torque down low, lots of mid-range to get one of those barges from 0 to 100 as fast as possible. The 5-liter doesn't have the weight to contend with, and it's got a set of heads that will allow that 5-liter to rev to some crazy numbers. So when you look at it from that point of view, it's just a fun race. It's two completely different cars, and I've said this over and over again. Love me some Coyote, and if you had one of each in your garage, you'd be in pretty good shape. You'd have both bookends of a driving experience to enjoy. And boys saying, also, why didn't Dodge offer wide body on the 5.7? Everything always goes to the 392 Scat Pack or Hellcat. It's funny you asked that, because I was asking kind of the same question. The reason why I was asking the same question, number one, is when is it going to waterfall to the 5.7 guys? 5.7 guys get the SRT hood, they get the spoiler now, they get pretty much everything else. But here was my argument to the 5.7 getting the wide body. The 5.7 should get the wide body before the 392, if you think about it, because most of the guys that are going to be doing any kind of mods to their cars, especially the cosmetic mods, in other words, cosmetic or suspension mods, in other words, coilovers, airbags, bigger, taller tires, wider, whatever, all of those guys are typically rolling with the 5.7 cars, and it's a smart play. You get the V8 sound, you get V8 performance, but you don't have to pay the 392 tax, and it's got a little bit better economy. Everything is just a little bit less expensive, but you get everything. You still get the noise, you still get the ability to light the tires up at will, but it's a more sensible approach if you're going to be doing a total car transformation. So for me, I'm looking at that going, dude, that's the perfect car to get the wide body stance and the wide body treatment, because for the guys that want to do everything to a Dodge, including sound system, and they're going for a look, a cruiser, a showstopper, that to me is a 5.7. It's not a 392. If you want a hot rod, get a 392. If you want a showstopper, get yourself a 5.7 and do it upright. That's what I would do if I was doing that personally. Kamal saying, guys, press the like button. Oh, yeah. Yeah, press the like button, guys. Like, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Do this show twice a week. Normally, I do it twice a week. I should say Tuesdays and Saturdays. Mike G saying, Challenger RTs have separate oil cooler drains? Believe so. I think it's right there, right on the driver's side, if I'm not mistaken. Thought it was just a scat pack thing? Not necessarily. I believe the newer ones do have the drains right. You don't have to change it. Most guys don't. But if you're swapping in with the same amount of oil, chances are that's what happened. Oh, Vortex saying, maybe you missed what I was saying. First 2020 Super Stock 1 of 200 ran a 1013. Stock, Ron Silva. Okay, so it's Ron. And I know Ron very well. In fact, Ron will be attending my track rental, where he will undoubtedly be going for the Super Stock record. So, Ron, best of luck to you, because I know you're going to do good. Yeah. Ron has a tendency to find ways to get more out of his car than other folks do. I'll leave it at that. Modern Red Hemi saying, come in late. How's it going for SB? It's going good. Waiting for my wife to try to pull a freaking practical joke on me. Floyd saying, hey, Mr. B, what's up? 309 rear diff will be here on Monday, and the Pedal Commander is on the way as well. Can't wait to get them installed and hit the track soon. Dude, you're going to love it. I can't wait for you to get them installed too, buddy. You are going to enjoy it. Some Ferrari guys saying the new Mach 1 is going to sell like hotcakes. You can get the GT350 manual gearbox that people love, and they should, or the 10-speed that people also love, and 480 horsepower, under 4,000 pounds. Can't wait to see them hit the track. So, guys, I've been saying this for a while. I understand that the Mach 1 is kind of a parts bin hot rod from Ford. And I'll tell you this right now. Be on the lookout. Check your six when it comes to that car. It's going to be nasty out there on the streets. That thing has got the GT350 intake, a revised tune. You can get it with the manual. You can get it with the automatic. I would be shocked, and I mean shocked, if the first one that drops doesn't end up getting a Lund tune, E85, the whole rest of the bit that comes along with it, and see that guy chasing 10s right out of the box. It's going to be a fast car. And for the guys that aren't hot rodding them, it is going to be a very fun car at that. So, I don't know, just my 2 cents. If I were to buy a Mustang, I know that people say, it's overpriced, and they didn't get the GT350 block, and it didn't have the bump and displacement. Whatever. That new Mach 1, for whatever reason, just seems to strike a chord with me. And it seems to have struck a chord with a lot of folks. Modern Red saying, I wish they made the 5.7 wide body. Shake and bake would be sick. Dan saying, you make some new man, bro? Dan saying, Destroyer 1320 couldn't be on tonight. Headed to Illinois for a funeral. Bummer, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Jimmy saying, I'm paying the 392 tax all the way around. I'm a glutton for punishment. I do understand what you were saying about 5.7 being much easier on the wallet on a modder's perspective. I do love my hot rod, and that's the thing, man. Look, 392, if you want to have a hot rod, they're a ball. And number 2, let me just go so far as to say this. This has come up several times, 5.7 or 392. Because I can't option a 5.7 the way that I would like to option it, I'm kind of stuck answering 392, but the same argument then goes 392 or Hellcat, and it goes, because I love me some 392, and it's the most usable power that's out there. I mean, if you're not talking about Mustang and we're talking about tire for tire, either way, you put a 392 on a drag radial, or one of the Mustangs on a drag radial, They can use every ounce of that power on the street. You can go out on the street, have a riot, and all the fun is had before 120 or 130 miles an hour. I mean, you stretch the thing's legs out to about 100 miles an hour, and it's a giddy good time. Stretch it out to $120, and hey, we're getting away with something. The problem with the Hellcats and anything faster, the Hellcat GT500, ZL1, ZR1, any of these really fast, Z06, any of these fast-ass cars that are out there today, and when I say Hellcat, that's any blown Hemi. It doesn't matter. Hellcat, Redeye, just pick something, okay? If it makes a noise, that's what I'm talking about. The problem is that with the car versions of these things, nothing is really fun. Well, it's a blast, okay? But they don't hook up on the street. You can't use that power on the street. And the other issue is that they will propel you to a speed that is not only go under the jail, you're not ever getting out of jail kind of jail. Let's just say the ticket is obnoxious and you ain't getting defensive driving for this to get out of it. It's weird. Those cars that I mentioned will all get you to 140 miles an hour on accident. I have been data logging my car, keeping in mind I'm doing high load, high RPM testing. I've got to have the car in those conditions to get the data that I need to make sure that everything is safe. 2 thumbs up, car's as giddy as a schoolgirl, the whole bit, but I've got to have that data. Without that data, I can't qualify the changes that I made to the tune. And y'all know me, it doesn't matter if I'm data logging somebody else's car, my car, it does not matter. I may as well be wearing a white lab coat, pencil protector, these goofy looking glasses. The fact of the matter is that it's just data acquisition. That's it at that point. And I'm looking at data, I'm looking at what's going on. Go what? Everything's checking out, everything's good, car feels great, no reason to pull out of the throttle. Run it through the gears and then roll out of it softly, apply the brake softly, slow the thing down, everybody's happy. Go back, look at the data log, 157 miles an hour. Didn't mean to go that fast, knew that the car was pulling really good, but the fact of the matter is these things go really, really, really fast. And I'm not going to say that they're not more fun, it's just they're not so much more fun than the 392 or the 50 or even the SS's. That is kind of the fun place. And I know that the fun stuff doesn't necessarily get the clicks, it doesn't get all the views, and it doesn't get all of that, but I will say this, and I'll keep coming back to this, guys, over and over and over again. Love Revlon to death. I've got Revlon exactly how I wanted the car. Couldn't have imagined ever having that car. Love it to death, runs exactly how I want it. The tune is absolutely spot on. So I'm happy there. In fact, we've gone 1020s in 0 DA. If I had a negative 1000 DA, the car would have gone deeper into the teens than it ever did before. So there's that. But one of the most fun times I ever had, me and my buddy Ray in his 1320. He's got a Frostbite 1320, absolutely gorgeous car. Track happened to be closed. We took the car out. There was some little dope spot down the road, and we literally made hits on that car for 2 hours straight. Each one of us driving, each one of us trying to outdrive the other guy in the same car using all the race pages and everything else, which, by the way, are pretty awesome in the new cars. Had more fun doing that than I would have ever had given the circumstances with my car at the drag strip. So just something to consider. You know, fast is one thing, fun is another, but when you can share it with a buddy, man, that makes it even better. Let's see. Oh, Mike G's checking about, yeah, check and make sure you don't have an oil filter, but if you're using the 339 instead of the 899, yeah, you would definitely be over by about half a quart, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken. Well, 339's like that. It's a little bitty thing. Still blows my mind. Anyway, I like the SRT filter. I also like the Bosch filter. Those are the two that I will run with my car. Mobil 1 makes a good filter too. But I could have sworn those things had an oil cooler. Kevin says, speaking of burning through first gear, my 306 gear RT even burns through first gear pretty fast in manual mode. It takes some practice to shift right before redline, starting from 3,400 RPM. Yep. They will definitely cook through that gear pretty quickly. Slimecoot is asking, do you have a trick for bleeding the Hellcat intercooler lines? The small bleeder valve at the top of the supercharger doesn't seem to be doing the job. A lot of guys will run a vacuum on it. So what you do, what he's asking about is on the passenger side of the car, you've got a reservoir. That reservoir is there. It's the highest point in the intercooling system. So it's got a normal cap on it, and the trick is to draw a vacuum, a very light vacuum on the system, and then fill it out of a bucket, basically, with a vacuum and then a bleeder system where when you click the switch over, what would normally be drawing in air, it'll be drawing in the fluid. So you need to draw a vacuum on it. R-Stage 3 saying, B Mason, what's up, brother? What's up, man? I'm all for retro-inspired packages. Notice the standard Mach 1's Retro Magnum 500, super cool. Love it. Like I said, guys, man, love me some freaking Mach 1. And what's funny as hell, too, this is what cracks me up. I don't really have a preference. I mean, yeah, I fly the Mopar banner pretty high, but I also have Foxy. I've got Sierra. We've got a Jeep out there. We got a 3rd gen Camaro sitting in the barn. I mean, which I love, by the way. I got a little bit of everything in the Armada. So anyway, getting back to it, I had somebody, this is going back a little bit when I was talking about, hey, y'all, watch out. Mach 1's coming. This is going to get nasty. Somebody fanboying me out saying say I'm all about Dodge, man. And I'm going, did you listen to is this the freaking Twilight Zone? Anyway, it's just kind of funny how things work out like that. But let's see. Dimboy's checking in saying, I wish that special orange gray color on the new Mach 1 came on the automatics, but I guess that's Ford making up for making the new GT500 a dual clutch automatic. Man, I tell you what, dude. I don't know. I just, oh, and by the way, still, for how many times I've been to the track? Call it 35D6 11. I don't know how many times I've been to the track since GT500 had shown up, but yet still to this day, not one. The only one I've seen on the road was a real pretty white with black stripes. The only one that I've ever sat in or had anything to do with was a real pretty maroon one. But I'll be honest with you, just playing with the tune on that car, kind of got a chance to see behind the curtain a little bit. Look, I know that there's things you can do to that transmission to beef it up. Obviously, there's some things in the tune that you can do to make a lot more power, pulleys, and everything else. Although, I gotta be honest with you guys, that car, even with a pulley, I mean, it didn't make a whole lot more power. I think, what did it make, like 7 1/4-ish? You do that with a 285 pulley on a Hellcat. So, I mean, I know I'm supposed to be impressed, but if you could have only seen what was just on the engine side, now didn't have visibility on the transmission side. It's a separate controller, transmission and engine, just like the Mopars. But just the amount of nannies on the engine side alone to limit power output, or I should say torque output, in this case load, to not overstress that transmission was pretty interesting. I mean, when you can pick up 40 foot-pounds of torque by just going on one table, it's a nanny table. 40 foot-pounds of torque. Not 14, 40. So that's just the way that it works out with those cars. Dimboy's asking, has any new information popped out about the Viper? Not yet, but I am still kind of waiting on it. to be honest with you, I think that final announcement, if you even want to call it that, or I should say the initial announcement, not the final announcement, the initial announcement, I've been told will come about halfway through 2021. Sorry, I inhaled some of the Gatorade there. Hopefully that sticks. That's what I've been told, and so I'm going to go ahead and roll with that. But, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. But again, when I was talking to the guy from FCA at Mecum, and this is, again, I've got the old thing back over there. 2016, yeah. Crazy stuff. I mean, it was weird just the way he was talking about that. What was funny, okay, I know you guys have heard me tell the story quite a bit. Hold on, Xcash saved Tyson about to KO Jones. Dude, don't hit me with a spoiler, but we'll see. I'm hoping Jones can get enough of stick, move, jab, check some angles. Because Tyson, the scary thing about Tyson is that you can't lean on him. You can't wrap him up and lean on him if you're Roy Jones. That's what Lennox Lewis did. Buster Douglas. Well, Buster Douglas had hands about this big around, but the big guys could always tire him out because they could tie him up. The thing is Roy Jones Jr. does not have that ability. Tyson's coming in at 220 pounds. He is the scariest looking 220-pound fella I think I've ever seen in my life. I've boxed guys that have fought like Tyson, that were built like Tyson, but none of them could move like Tyson. And I can tell you that shovel hook is no joke. I can tell you that lead hook, shovel hook, counter hook is going to be nasty, along with any of the angles. If he works any inside angles on Roy Jones, he had better be on a bicycle. Talking about Jones, better be on a bicycle. He's going to need to really get used to throwing that step back, like that 45-degree hook. He's going to have to shut down. He's got to make Tyson pay for getting anywhere near him. If it's Tyson showing up as old school Mike Tyson. If he comes out, if he's slow, it's going to depend on how he executes. The big thing, though, here is keep in mind, Roy Jones is good with combinations. He'll come in, he'll kind of do a step over, do a 45-degree hook, come back in with another straight. He can switch stances. All that's great. It'll be pop, 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 and it'll be these real weird off-cadence combinations. But here's the twist. You don't know which one he's stinging you with. It could be a setup. It could be a feint jab straight. It could be a feint jab off cross. And then neither one of those are just setting you up. It's pepper, get your guard up, come back in with a hook to the body, come back in with a feint, come back in with a stance change, and go straight right hand. The guy, that's the thing. With Roy Jones Jr., you never know which punch he's leaning on. You don't know which one he's sitting down on. Mike Tyson, dude's sitting on everything, dude. Everything he throws, he's trying to remove ribs. He's not trying to hit you. He's trying to remove body parts. So we'll see, man. We'll see. There's your boxing analysis for the evening. But yeah, the little guys, the tanks, they were always a little bit of a problem, but I always had problems with the littler, really quick guys that would just catch me with footwork, catch me with angles. But yeah, those guys never worked freaking bad like Tyson, man. Let's see. Dimboy is asking, have you heard any new news about the Gen 7 Camaro, or is it still going to end in 2023? Right now, the rumor mill was churning about 2023, but we don't have, nobody has said we are killing the Camaro in 2023. They have made changes to the lineup that look like they're still investing in the platform, so maybe there's a change coming in 2023. I'm hoping that it sticks around, man. And this is the other thing. Not to climb back up on my normal soapbox, but I want to see more from the Camaro. The Camaro to me bums me out because it's not muscle car like the 392. It's not sports car, pony car in the way that the Mustang is. It just doesn't seem to do as good of a job at doing one or the other as well as the 392 or the 5-liter, right? So for me, I don't know, pick your side, right? I mean, do you want to be a pony car? Fantastic. That 6.2 has got to get a dual mode fuel system. It's got to have port and direct injection, slightly revised camshaft, and the thing needs to be able to spin to about 7,000 RPM. And it needs to go after the Mustang, and it needs to not even think about trying to mess with or play in the 392 sandbox. If there was only that one change made to that car, it would not only change the complexion of that car, but it would change the way that the segment is looked at, primarily by Dodge, because Dodge right now is kind of doing really good at being second place to the Mustang in terms of total sales. But in terms of performance cars being sold, I think they're number one. So, oh wait, there's the twist though. Did you hear it coming? See, the only thing that Chevrolet has is the Camaro. Corvette is basically a brand onto itself. And when you look at the fact that Chevrolet has got really nothing to show for, well, anything in terms of performance. Okay, the Vet, okay. But the Camaro, what about with Dodge, you've got, I mean, good Lord, nobody's got more than Dodge. And with Ford, you've got GT350, GT500, Mustang GT, the Mach 1. All of these are a little bit different, right? You've got the Raptor. You've got, well, the 5-liter pickup truck, which is, I mean, dude, let's be honest. If you want to build a hot rod pickup, what other platform would you buy? Ford's kind of got it going on in that respect. Dodge is in your face with it, but Chevy just doesn't have anything to back up the Camaro. I mean, the Camaro is basically walking into a gang fight just solo. So it makes it kind of hard, I guess, for me to get all worked up when there's only the Camaro. And in a way, it kind of makes sense, though. I mean, if you're going to do something, at least do it really, really well. Do it better than everybody else, right? Well, the problem is that Chevrolet isn't doing that with the brand Camaro. In fact, you would almost, well, you would be forgiven if you thought that they were going to get rid of the Camaro, because I would fall into that same boat. They don't have anything else. And the Corvette, being the brand standalone that it is, well, the one thing that the Corvette does, which would make me think that the Camaro would stick around, is that the Camaro occupies a price point that the Corvette said "Hey-os" to and ran right up the ladder to the stratosphere, basically, in that you're looking at, what is it? Realistically, $78,000 for a Vet. I mean, if you're going to get one optioned like dealers order them, about 78 grand. I don't even know what a ZL1 sells for, but I don't know how far away that is from $78,000. But since there's nothing else, the Camaro would be the only other performance option other than the Corvette. So anyway, that's how I'm seeing it, and I would tend to agree with some of the rumors that had been circulating that the Camaro will not be discontinued, only slightly revised. Let's see. Did you say, I miss the old days when you had to go into your garage and earn respect, not buy your way into it? Well, let me tell you what I had to do with this thing. Everything. I'll put you like this. On Foxy, the only thing I've never removed or replaced on the car are door seals and the window trim, the little window trim that goes along right there. So, speaking of which, what's on the books for Foxy? Talking about, you know, getting in your garage and earning this stuff. Foxy has got headlights coming because she needs new headlights. You can't really see, but she definitely needs new headlights. I've got a ECU relocation harness that's coming, which I've been wanting to do to the car, honestly, for about 20 years. Literally. It's got, what else did I order for this thing? I don't know. I ordered about $300 or $400 worth of parts, and I got to sit here and try to remember what all I ordered for. Anyway, trim pieces, new belt line trim, new roof trim, things like that. I'll be probably just repainting the window trim because that's simple enough to do. It's just flat black. Yeah, that's just kind of sprucing her up a little bit. But no, I understand exactly what you're talking about, man. And it doesn't mean that you can't get out there and work on these newer hot rods. In fact, that's how I learned everything that I know how to do, is just by working on these things myself. But you know, it's true. A lot of these things are just really fast from the factory, and it's amazing to me, really, how far these things have come. But what even amazes me farther is that, well, just how little upgrades and modifications really do for these cars. You know, it used to be that, you know, you put a set of heads cam intake on a 5-liter Mustang is good for about 130 horsepower. So there you go. I mean, and that's kind of the way that it worked back then. Nowadays, it doesn't even come close to working like that. Be doing damn good to get anywhere near 50 or 60 horsepower out of one of these monsters nowadays. But then again, you got to remember, you're starting out way more powerful than what these things did back in the day. I mean, you got to remember, this little old Mustang rated at 225, engine was later rated at 205. That's not very much. So given the displacement, it wouldn't take much to actually bump it up that 100-odd horsepower. Doesn't work like that with these modern cars. They're already at that power level or significantly higher. Put it to you like this. This is a 351 in Foxy. The 351 in Foxy with heads, nice little cam in the intake. Hey, babe. The 351 with the heads, the cam intake. What did it make? About 300 horsepower to the rear wheels. Not bad for the era, and considering it's still a low compression engine, not bad overall. But look at what a modern 5.7 makes. The modern 5.7 in the car, the RTs, makes 330 horsepower. A good healthy one will. I mean, most of them will make at least 320. That's a solid, call it 10% more power than what this thing is making. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that, oh, and by the way, that would be the most analogous to this car in that both of them have a fixed runner or traditional intake manifold. So just something to consider. You know, a lot of it has to be about built, not bought, and all this other stuff. But just remember where you're at now versus where you came from, because the same size engine making 10% more power, bone stock in just corporate engine form, well, it's making more power than a heads cam intake manifold 351, and that's in essence same size engine from the previous era, which I find hysterical. Now, torque is a little bit different story, but really doesn't matter because, I mean, look, it is what it is. These modern engines are making modern horsepower. They're making power in a way that these old engines simply can't. The efficiency range is so much greater with these newer engines than these old ones. But doesn't mean these old war horses can't be a lot of fun. And this thing's a riot because it doesn't weigh anything. Let's see. Mike saying, I know I'm harping on this for a while now, but the local graybeard at the shop suggested to run a thin tube into the oil dipstick tube and draw excess oil that way. Does that work on these engines? Yep, works on all engines, my man. You can definitely do that. But if you don't have the pump, then, you know, you just do it kind of the brute force method. Speed Freak's checking in saying, hey, the E85 question on a daily driven E85 setup. How do you monitor the ethanol content besides testing the fuel? Is there a gauge you can install? Not that I'm aware of for the Mopars. You do still have to do your gauge, your testing like normally. The GMs have got a gauge. I think you can retrofit into the Fords the GM gauge, but I'm not sure if the gauge is... if you can retrofit the gauge into the Mopars. I haven't heard of anybody doing that yet. I'm not saying you can't do it, I just haven't heard of anybody doing it yet. But I wish that you could, because that would make life really nice, being able to run a monitored gauge like that. Because if you could run that, then you would have access to all that is flex fuel. Being able to run whatever combination of gasoline and E85 to make one of these things run like you'd like. So, wish that were the case. Let's see. Mike saying, don't see any reason why not. Just curious if there's anything to watch out for when you're doing that. Talking about running the tube through the dipstick. Actually, that's how Mercedes tells you to drain the crankcase. No, nothing to watch out for. Just make sure that the tube goes all the way to the bottom. And if you're going to drain the crankcase, if not, you just put the vacuum tube on it, or the vacuum canister on it, and you're good. Just don't forget to, check your oil when you're done. Other than that, no. Guys have been doing that stuff for 100 years. No big deal. Isaac's asking, what injector should I use for a 392 E85 kit? I would say go with a set of fuel injector connection, 650cc injectors, Fuel 1. Give Keith a shout. He can set you up with those same injectors. Some guys like to cheat them up a little bit to the 750s, but the 650s will do just fine. Let's see. Oh, Dim Boy's running saying, I think the reason you don't see the new GT500 that much is because they made it a DCT only. Well, yeah, but here's the thing though. I see plenty of freaking C8s there. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say that I have seen more C8s at the drag strip than I have seen just driving around out in the open. Maybe it's because the guys just kind of squat up and roll out to the track, but I mean, on any given night, you'll see at least 2, maybe even 3. And they're all running really good. I mean, they're running 1150s, 1140s. They're out there getting it done, and the car's quick. They sound amazing. They look the part. So, they're out there having fun. Guys and girls that own those things are out there racing them. DCT, V8, good-looking car. Where's the GT500? And I'm not really trying to lean on the GT500, but I'm going to lean on the GT500. I mean, the people say, oh, it's a limited production, and no. Really? Well, so's the Demon, okay? And you'll see a Demon. You'll see at least 2 or 3 Demons at the drag strip on every given weekend. People talk about, well, the old GT500. Dude, let me tell you something. There's about a little over half a dozen GT500s that'll roll out to my drag strip on any given weekend. Take your pick on Mustangs just in general. I mean, the over-under on that's probably somewhere around 35. Stuff that you wouldn't think would be at the drag strip, like SRT4s. There's a nasty little squad of those that shows up. Obviously, the LS crowd with the LS trucks, that contingent got some fast-ass trucks. Anywhere from a 11-second street truck all the way down to a 7-second race truck, which is actually also a street truck, which is scary as hell. and of course Hellcats. There's, you know, the whole litter is down there every weekend, along with your 392s and your contingent of some SS Camaros, but not a ton. But no GT500, and I don't know. To me, it's just a little bit of a bummer. Let's see. I was saying I have the Advanced Dynamics fuel kit on stock injectors and my car seems slower. That would be tune related. Let's see. But if you're going E85, you need the injectors to go with it, man. Let's see. Hellcat Rube's asking, has anyone ever got a P2626 code on their Hellcat? I've never even heard of that code. So if somebody can Google it, I would be more than happy to tell you how to work around it, but I have just never heard of a 2626 code. I've had, let's see, what is it, 0146 with my fuel pressure, the 0128, whatever this ends in 28 for the temperature. That's the other one, but not familiar with that one. Never even heard of that one before. Let's see, R Stage 3, this is kind of a good point, saying, buy a 10R85 and a power adder and you'll go faster than a new modded GT500s and save about 50 grand. Well, yeah, that's kind of the problem. And just like I said, and look, I get this 100%. And I called this, by the way, early on. Everybody with a GT500 is going to have a freaking bullseye on their back. Because everybody, and I mean everybody with a hot rodded GT is going to snipe that GT500. Look, I get it. It's a 1060, 1080 car a couple of times at the drag strip before it goes into limp mode. But I will tell you that they will turn a number. But here's the problem. Just like you say, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need boost. You can be on that GT500's going through the traps, and it's not going to justify a $50,000 cost difference, especially when both of the cars to an alien beaming in from Mars wouldn't know the difference between the two just looking at them. Amanda's saying, how many miles does your Hellcat have? My Hellcat has 15,500 odd miles on it. Did you say enticing is getting old? The smart guys left the sport to save their health. The thing is back in the day, here's the weird thing about it. Boxing is a weird game, especially when you're a power puncher. The problem with being a power puncher is that there's several problems. One, you never really lose power if you're naturally able to throw powerful shots. It's a mechanics thing. It has nothing to do really with mass, although it kind of can. In his case, it does. The thing is, though, is that back in the day, 30 was an old man. 35 was questionable about getting into the ring. You got to remember that Foreman, when he was, 42, I think his last fight, he was 47 or 48 years old, but everybody was going, dude, you are like grandpa hobbling around in there. Nowadays, 42, you're really just now hitting your stride in some cases, modern chemistry notwithstanding, of course, in many of those cases. But think of it like this. I mean, at 40, a lot of these guys are doing really well in the NFL. A lot of these guys are doing really well in mixed martial arts. Because now it's not necessarily a game of athleticism, but it's a game of positioning. It's a game of strategy. It's a game of angles. And the knowledge that you don't have to try to take somebody's head completely off their shoulders every time you throw something. Well, the thing is now at 50 years old, these guys have got the bodies and the endurance of some of their younger contemporaries, I should say. And look at Tyson. Look at the speed that he can throw. Look at how he can still march guys down. people just don't know how to deal with that type of style anymore. Things have evolved, but now they've evolved so far away from where they were then, that style is now in its own unique bubble. It's in a position to where you've got to restudy this. Same with Roy Jones Jr. The guy's not technically old, but he's got a lot of miles on him. And in this case, it's a scary situation for him because, again, his strategy has never been to come in and try to rip somebody's head off. He's going to touch you up with combinations. He's going to set you up, and then he's going to rip either a straight right. He's going to come at you with one of these 45-degree hooks. He's going to set up an angle to where you can drive, maybe even a switch to southpaw, drive straight left, come back over with a right hook. That's going to end up catching you, and that's what's going to drop you. But it's not the hook will be the follow through from the straight left that he throws when he switches up to southpaw after working the angle. Tyson doesn't fight like that, but both fighters have been able to keep away from getting damaged a whole lot throughout their career, unlike a lot of middleweights or even some of the light heavyweights or cruiserweight, really for that matter, bigger guys, but they just sit in there, get in there and trade, where those guys have to get touched up to just land a punch, and the speed is much greater. Roy Jones was able to come in and actually be somebody that was much faster than pretty much anybody else in any given weight class that he was in. So, I don't know, guys. We'll see where it winds up, but man, I'm scared. But I think Roy's going to be quick enough. He's going to be able to work angles, be able to turn Mike. It's just he's got to do that for about 4 rounds. And keep in mind, these are 2-minute rounds, not 3-minute rounds, which does make a difference. We'll see. And I don't care what kind of headgear you're wearing. You can wear a freaking motorcycle helmet, wear a freaking love seat on your head. It doesn't matter. Mike Tyson catches you with that hook, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it, and you're going to experience. It's not a thing where you feel it. You're going to experience it. That's going to be an experience that you will never live down, assuming you can remember what happened afterwards. He's saying, let the sports to save their health, money and everything. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of guys, especially the middleweights and light heavyweights, I feel the most sorry for those guys. I would see those guys just get worked over, which sucks. Because let me tell you guys something. The difference between a guy weighing 170 pounds and 185 pounds is a lot, but they're both grown-ass men, and they can both hammer you with power. So it just depends on if the second or the third that connects drops you. Some Ferrari guys saying at our State Street, if all you care about is straight line, the GT500 corners like it's on rails. They do handle well. That is for sure. That platform is so good. Kobe Warren saying, hey, got the arm flexes. I like it. Some Ferrari guys saying, it seems the Camaro is more about road course work these days. You know, you might be onto something there. I mean, if you are going to play on a closed circuit, the Camaro, I mean, it'd be hard to say you would be doing bad with the Camaro. It's just that, God, look how good the Mustang does. It's just, and that's a situation too where power doesn't necessarily equal a good thing. I mean, having to manage torque is a problem. You can have, that's why the Coyote's so good in that environment. You can flat foot that thing in areas where you can't flat foot a 6.2. So, I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening with it. I'm interested to see what does end up happening with the Camaro post 2023. I would be bummed out if they do away with it because I feel like there is so much left on the table with that car. And here's the other thing I really like about the Camaro. It's not retro styled. And I like that a lot. I like that the new generation, the younger guys, can have something that they can call their own. I see where the identity is a little bit lost with the Camaro, and I can completely understand that. But to me, that's the one saving grace for the Camaro, is that it's not trying to harken back to anything. It's a look forward rather than a look back. you know where all that kind of stuff goes. So for me, that's where the Camaro does its best work. I think that there's still a lot of learning to be done. I think that there's still a lot of evolving that can take place with that car. I would not want to bet against it if they keep it long term, but I sometimes wonder if they will basically cut bait and head back to camp. I see what they're doing with the Corvette right now, and I'm a little bit saddened, not necessarily because of the cost issue with the Corvette, but if you want to get into a GM-powered hot rod, especially if you're a younger guy or gal that just wants just a fun hot rod to play with, that's not your dad's or your uncle's car, that's the only one you've got to pick from. Unless you're into the JDM stuff. And that's when the 400Z comes into play. That's where the Super comes into play. 400Z is going to come in significantly less expensive, and you can get it with a 6-speed manual transmission, and it is a good looking car. So there's that to consider. And with that competition, you got to ask yourself, how is that car? I mean, talk about a dark horse. The 400Z is going to sneak in right through the side hatch, and nobody's going to see this thing coming, even though it's blasting through with all the pomp and circumstance of the freaking circus. But the 400Z is really the one to look out for, in my opinion, if we're just talking about stock cars, not modding the thing, not drag racing necessarily. And the reason why I say that is because, yeah, it's down a little bit on power, but it's also going to be significantly down in terms of weight. Power to weight ratio can end up being very similar between the two. 6-speed manual is absolutely an option. It's not an option with the Supra. Cost is going to be down. See where I'm going with this? I think the Camaro might have a little bit more competition on its hand that it bargained for. And just remember that pyramid that I always talk about, that inverted pyramid where you have Mustang on this side, 392 on this side. The Camaro doesn't do anything better than the Mustang does at being Mustang, and doesn't do anything better than the 392 cars do at being 392. But it's still a V8 rear drive car. It just kind of defaults into this weird bottom of the funnel. But what about the 400Z? It's a completely different driving experience. Uh-oh, that's interesting already. V6, okay, turbo, what? You've already got my attention. Lightweight, oh shit. And it's a Z car, and it harkens back a little bit, and it's got that retro-inspired styling, just like the Challenger, just like the Mustang. Damn it. Now, instead of having that weird-looking upside-down triangle, you've got like this new equilateral. Everybody's kind of got an equal share. Everybody's got a driving experience that you can draw from. That car, in my opinion, is really going to be the one to look out for, because the performance is going to be there. The driving experience is going to be there. It's going to be a great looking car, and it's going to offer up a driving experience that is going to be new to everybody that's going to be basically in that same car segment or market segment. It's basically a Japanese pony car, something that we really haven't been able to latch onto with the 370Z, basically because it was down on power. And remember back in the day when the 350Z was like the pony car? Back then when 275 horsepower was a lot? Well, the 350Z did just that. And I owned one, and I loved it. I lived in Northern California. I'd go ripping up PCH. I'd be up in the mountains. I'd be doing Alice's runs with this thing, up in La Honda, up near HMB, all that stuff. I was out there having a ball with this car. But in the normal conversation of hot rod and big power, it just would never be brought up. And unfortunately, that same narrative kept being driven coming into, well, 2020. And everybody was forgetting about the 370Z, even though the car is great to look at, handles like you wouldn't believe. It just never had the power to back it up. Well, now it does. And it may in a big way. So be on the lookout for that thing to hit the streets. That may round out the, I don't know, driving experience trifecta, if you will. And will put a lot of folks on notice at GM that if they don't get their act together, maybe now would be a good time to hang up the keys to that Camaro. Anyway, let's see. Raymond Campbell's checking out engine, what is that, TNXE6 numbers. The engine plant. So he's just breaking down some build sheet info for us. Our stage is hanging out with some Ferrari guy. He's just saying, yeah, that engine won't tell you what it was in, but it'll tell you what you have. Absolutely. Some Ferrari guys saying, I don't understand why they're not making it out. They're running 10.6s, which is what I was talking about earlier. Clutch 392 is asking, thoughts about Jay Green and his tunes, cams, and overall business? I don't know, Jay. I mean, I've heard of guys that have had good experience with him. I know that if you don't have access to a local tuner, Jay is a good resource for internet tuning or remote tuning. But I don't have a whole lot of experience with his products. And since I don't mess around in that sandbox with the remote tuning and all of that, we kind of did over at Pites, but not the way that he's doing it. He's doing it email files, and we did on like live remote tuning. So our stage is still hanging out with some Ferrari guy. Let's see. Floyd's asking, any problem running the drag pack setup without TPMS installed other than getting the low tire pressure warning? Nope, I don't have any TPMS on that thing at all. Like I say, the only thing you may notice is a 1 to 2 yip in the shift, but you may not even notice that unless you run the car in real low DAs, and that's just where it'll pull, drop, and then hit second, go through the gears. That's just predictive shift, trying to figure out if you're about to bump into a rev limiter with that stock tune. Aside from that, you'll be good. And like I say, mine didn't really yip. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't remember it yipping much at all right after I did the gearing. So, but no, brother, you are in good shape with that. Let's see. Kim is asking, what good does an E85 gauge do after you fill your tank with E60? Well, if anything, at least you'll know that you have E60 in your tank. But point taken. In fact, it's a point that we've had to contend with on the tuning side of it. I have run into bad tanks of E85 on a number of occasions, and it's no fun. In fact, it sucks because that basically ruins your entire day with that car. So, yeah, just kind of an FYI. Make sure you're checking your E85 every time you put it in the tank. Let's see. Our stage, there are several stock engine Gen 3 Coyotes that have busted into the 7s already. Actually, there's more than several. There's probably about 15 or 18 of them that have done it. And then Boys is saying, you are right. I've seen way more C8s on the street than I've seen the new GT500s. Absolutely. And by the way, that is a race more than anything. Those are dedicated race setups, GT Turbo 400 trans. Some cases, they are Power Glide setups also. Let's see. The boy saying, I guess Ford overrated the GT500. You know what, man? I don't know if they overrated it. I think what they did is they didn't quite expect some of the backlash. And what I mean by backlash is I come from a bit of a Ford background. And I got to tell you something. If the GT500 were offered with a beefed up 10R80, that would get my attention very quickly. Like right now quickly. But it didn't. And, you know, ifs, right? If my aunt had a package, she'd be my uncle. So given the fact that this is the direction that they chose to go, it makes it really difficult for a lot of traditional hot rod guys to gravitate towards that car to begin with. And again, I would never discount the GT500. I am on record as saying how much I love the GT500 of old, how much I still am in love with that car, and still surprisingly shocked that I have never even owned one, although I've driven several of them, played with them, all of that. Never did own one, which, weird. Anyway, getting back to it, eventually we'll see them and hit the drag strip. It's just taking a little bit of time. HU37's checking in with Hellcat Rube about that, what's it called, the code that came up. Let's see. Canada guy saying, how's it going tonight? Just put the 6.1 away for the winter, but do I have a new set of wheels for next summer? Very nice. Queen saying, I agree with what you said about the Camaro. Wish we could see some more muscle cars brought back where some resemble old school and some more modern, more variety than either the Challenger or the Mustang. And unfortunately, that's kind of the way that we're going with this. Some Ferrari guy saying, drop the LT2 in the 2023 Camaro and drop the price a little bit and the problem solved. And fix the visibility. You know, I tell you something, not necessarily a bad direction to go, right? I mean, what other direction would they have? And if they've already got it on tap, I mean, why not use it? That's what I would do. I like the idea. Raymond saying, so how would you feel if you got smoked by a Z? Well, it wouldn't be surprising. I mean, you got to remember that Nissan, for their entire existence, has been on the forefront of either making stuff that's really fast, really sporty, and all of that. What's weird is you almost want to give them a mulligan for the 370. I mean, the 350 came out just haymaker swinging. It was just hard to beat, but they never really improved on it. I mean, they did with the HR, and then they moved to the 3.7 liter and all of that. I get all of that. But the problem is that they never evolved it to keep up with its contemporaries. It was trying to be something that this market, at least the United States, more North American market, was just going, not really feeling it. So now with the new 400Z, 420Z, 450Z, whatever they're going to call it, I'm super stoked about this thing and can't wait to see it. And don't be surprised if you start seeing them putting in some pretty nasty work, a la the Supra, because keep in mind, plenty of Supras out there are playing around in that mid 11 to low 11 second range. A lot of them are dipping into the 10s. Seeing that a lot lately at the drag strip. Just don't sleep on them. They can book. Our stage is saying, can't wait to see the new 400Z. I think Nissan did a great job with it. Maybe they see the success Chrysler has had with the Challenger's retro vibe. Really cool car. Like you said, it's going to be sick. I'm stoked for it. HU37 Clutch 392. Contact Modern Red Hemi or Incredible Hemi. They're on YouTube, and use Jay Green for their tunes. Yeah, you know, that's the thing. For the internet tunes or for the remote tunes, things like that, that's always tough. There's only so many hours in the day, and you've got to be profitable. You got to be able to make money, and the tunes, there's only so many revisions you've got in you before you're like, look, dude, you're on your own, you know. So I will say take any negative feedback with a grain of salt. You know, each one, and I've said this so many times, you guys know what I'm about to say, right? Every Mopar is a snowflake. You guys know that I say that over and over again because I kid you not. There are so many little running operating system changes that even within the same year, and I go back to Shalandra and SRT Jimmy's SRT, our operating systems were not identical. There were just a bunch of little things that if you did a compare file with my tune and his, just a bunch of goofy little differences, some small little changes that they made along the way. So much so that our cars even sounded different, even though we had the exact same exhaust. So, I'm saying all of this not to try to set anybody up for success or failure. I'm just saying, look, there are tunes that are known to work. There's timing values that are known to work, air-fuel ratios that are known to work. That's about as deep as you're going to get with these cars. When it comes to transmission tuning is subjective, and you're going to have to take what your tuner gives you as an overall generally accepted transmission tune when it comes to firmness, shift points, and everything else. Wearing the guy out on, well, I don't like it. I want it to shift another 100 RPM here, or it's a little bit too high here under partial throttle. Look, I get it. You're spending all this money. You want to get your money's worth, and I understand that completely. But trust me, if you're well, and I'm going to get to mechanical issues here in just a minute, so hold me to that, because that's the big, well, let me just get to that anyway. I've already worn out the other topic. When it comes to the remote tuning, there's nothing worse than being a guy trying to put a remote tune together for a car with some kind of weird mechanical problem. I used to, well, if I had hair, I would have been pulling my hair out when I was with Pikes, whenever Alex would get mired down with some kind of a weird mechanical issue. And it always had something to do with long tube headers. Seals weren't correct. They were sucking in fresh air because of pulse pressure wave differences anyway. It was always a mechanical issue, and you can't tune the car when you have some kind of a funky mechanical issue that's jacking with your O2 sensors. No O2 sensors, no tune. And that was one of the biggest issues. So if you're going to be going that route, and when I'm talking about going that route, we were just talking about internet tunes, email tuning, etc. If you're going that route and you've got long tube headers on the car, make sure that they are sealed properly. No exhaust leaks. Get the car up on ramps, crawl up underneath it while it's in park, emergency brakes locked in, tires are chucked, the whole bit. Make sure that there are no exhaust leaks on any coupler, any mating surface with those long tube headers. I cannot tell you how many times that has ruined a tuning session. So there's that. Now, can you just put a tune together, say load this and you'll be fine? Yeah, but you'll never really be hitting the nail on the head, so to speak. So just know that going into the process. I understand it. It's a major process, but there are limits to everything. And without having the car in person, you won't have the absolute best results that you can get. Some for our guys saying, and the LT5 and the Camaro ZL1, and that's a serious car right there, for real. Raymond saying, Supras are kind of weird looking. You know what? I got to tell you something. The Supra is a little bit weird looking, and I've got a thing for that weird looking little car. I don't know what it is, man. I've just got a little bit of a crush on the Supra, and maybe it's because it's something different. Maybe it's, just the curviness of it or whatever. I just think it's a pretty freaking car, and I just love the way that those things look. Some Ferrari guys saying the problem with the 400Z is it's going to be in the $55,000 price range. I had seen something where it was going to be significantly lower than that, like in the 42 range. But that could change. That could be something different. But that's just what I had seen. So, there might be some trim levels that are going to be that high. But then again, look, how many of these cars nowadays are $40,000? How many of them are $50,000? Let me put you like this. How many of these cars today can you option with a couple of doodads and this and that and get it to 50 grand anyway? It's like that's the new number. That's the new norm. And like it or not, here's where we're at. So you got to pay to play, I guess. But it's just a lot of money to be asking for folks to pay for what is in essence a toy, really. And then Raymond's saying my 2020 wide body Scat Pack was 50. That's kind of the point that I'm making. So, you know, and that's the other thing. When it comes to these cars, price point is a thing. And I know that that's not something people like to talk about. They'll just talk about, well, I can take a Mustang and it's 35 grand and I put 30 grand into it and look, it runs nines. Yeah, it does. But look at what you've done. You've created a race car, typically, depending on where in the nines that it's running. There are limits to all of these cars, and that limit is typically going to be found somewhere around that, you know, above and beyond what you spend on the car. When you start sinking $20,000-$30,000 into one of these things, which is real easy to do, that's really when you kind of need to check up a little bit, because it's easy to do. The power point is obnoxious, and you can get to that power point real quick with these cars. So that's the other crazy thing. It's just how much power you can make. Ernesto's in. What up, man? Saying that's what happened in my Ram RT when Alex was tuning it. Something with the headers, but he worked his magic. Good tuner, good guy to work with. Yeah, that was an interesting tuning experience. But yeah, yours was knock retard was going crazy with your car or with your truck. All right, guys. Well, listen, we are coming up on almost 2 hours into the show. I am going to go ahead and pull up myself. Guys, I want to thank each and every one of y'all for hanging out with me tonight. Couldn't do it without you guys. Love each and every one of you. Just remember, if you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Keep wearing your mask, if not for yourself, then for others. And with that, that's a wrap. I will catch y'all on the next one. Adios.